Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Awaken Freedom with Scotty Z. I am stoked for this conversation today. This is actually round two with our guest, Nicholas Blewett. And guys, you're in for a treat today. If you saw the description of this, the ancient fighting and healing art. How do you have fighting and healing in the same context? Aren't they opposite? Well, no, they're not in the ancient art of Tai Chi and Chi Gong. And today we're getting to talk with a master. I'm talking an Australian master who was not only a Chinese medical doctor, but also a master of these ancient movement arts, Tai Chi and Chi Gong. So as I said, this is round two. We've had this conversation, but what's in it for you? This is a massive time of awakening. This is a massive time of an energetic change. And what Tai Chi and Chi Gong can do is help us get back in touch with that Chi energy, the body energy, to raise our vibration, to be able to have more health, more strength, more focus, more concentration by slowing it all down, Matrix style. So we're going to dive in with Nicholas Blewett and find out, how do we do that? What does it all mean? And if you haven't caught the first episode, I'll link that in the show notes. Head over to scottyz.com, grab all of these show notes and the previous episode with Nicholas. But without further ado, let's dive in. Nicholas, it's great to have you back, brother. So you were talking before about where we left off. Give us a bit of a synopsis of what we spoke about in the first episode, and then let's pick it up from there.
All right. First of all, hey, Scotty, how are you?
Bloody good.
Yeah, in the first one, I think we just touched on Tai Chi and how and Chi Gong and how it grows the body and how the movement mechanics and the practice physically grows the body towards evolution, growing our body into a more complete form, into a more complete beast.
Okay.
In the compound kind of sporting movements it does, and why that was so important to do it slow, and how that works with our energy and moves us towards evolution. And then I think we got to the point where we're going to talk about that from the level of the three dantian in Chinese medicine.
Yeah, which I've never heard of before, but you started to guide us on.
Yeah. I think we ran short in time, so we kind of stopped, and you were like, I want to know more about that. So.
Cool. Tell us quickly then, let's pick it up from there. The three dantian, as I mentioned in the first one, I've trained martial art since I was 10 years old, for the last 30 years. And I know a lot about the dantian because I trained Kung Fu, which I always thought was one dantian in the belly. But you're saying to us there's three dantian. What is a dantian for everyone that's just tuning in? And just give us that brief run through of the three types of energy and the three dantian. So give us that foundation and then let's grow it from there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so dantian is kind of like two words. So dan is elixir, so a refined substance, an elixir. Beautiful. Tien means field. And so field, we can think of a geometry.
Okay.
Okay, a geometry that is set up by the physical structure of the body.
Okay.
I think last time we talked about a tensegrity, and I mentioned that the tensegrity is kind of like a spider web, and it sets up a tension system that holds things open through tension as opposed to compression or like beams. Tension is more like a spider web, so to speak, or a suspension bridge. The actual tension on the cables hold the bridge up. So tension is actually what holds our body open. When that tension is excessive, we get so tight that it pulls the structure out of shape. And when we're too loose, the structure becomes floppy and loose. And so we actually want to create these tensegrities to be stronger, but maintain their tensegrity in their geometry, in their openness, without being compressed or having that area with inside broken down or limited. Yeah. And so the dan, the elixir part, is being refined by the tien, by the field. So the geometry or the geometry of our body, the shape and the openness and completeness of the structure of our body actually refines an elixir or a substance within our body. And so we have three of these dantian within our body.
And so on that point though, so just to confirm, so if you have the correct or the perfect geometrical shape of that field, the tien, it will create a more refined or a more perfect elixir or a higher vibration or whatever it is, elixir.
Exactly. Its capacity to refine that substance becomes stronger, more complete.
And when you say geometry, I literally imagine like sacred geometry, because I believe that, you know, this whole thing is sacred geometry. Not only believe, I mean, there's enough evidence to show us that that is true. So the geometry, say, of these fields, I imagine like a, you know, what is the sacred geometries, the different ones, the cube, what is Metatron's cube, and all of these different geometrical shapes. So when it's out of shape, it doesn't produce a beautiful elixir. When it is in perfect geometrical shape, then the elixir will flow and will have more energy and power.
Exactly. It's like it'll be able to refine, create, or build more of the substance that belongs to that Dantian.
Yeah, wow.
And we'll go into those in a little bit, but the three Dantian have their own substance.
Mm-hmm.
And when you begin to look at these substances, how they work, you can kind of come up with an idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs even, or of this evolutionary scale of how we build towards, similar to the way the chakra work. And there's actually a really interesting relationship to the Dantian and the chakra, which I'll go into in just a moment. So I actually like to, even though the geometries of these Dantian would be the structure of our body, okay, I actually like to think of them as like diamonds or as pyramids inside the body, because the idea of these Dantian as the substance builds from the bottom of the pyramid till it grows more voluminous, and then it kind of refines before it gets to the next Dantian, where it builds up again and then refines, and then it builds up and kind of refines. And if we look at three Dantian, one placed on top of the other, and we have a point at the bottom of the Dantian, a point in the middle of the Dantian, and then one at the top, and then one in the middle of the next one at the top, and then one in the middle of the next one and one on top, we actually end up with the exact points of the chakra.
Yeah, of course. Wow. Yeah, wow. So the middle of the Dantian is the belly, and the bottom of that Dantian is the root chakra. Then that comes into the solar plexus, where the next one would start. The bottom of that, they would join together. So the two of them joining is one chakra, and then the middle again is the heart, and then these two joining here at the throat, the middle, and then the top. Wow, that's fantastic.
So it goes up again. And so there is differences in the translation through Chinese text of the exact location of these. But in my own personal experience, in my own opinion, that makes the most sense for point function and the relationship of how acupuncture would view the Dantian in its functions. And it actually lines up quite nicely.
So a question, because my understanding is that it started in the Vedic culture in India, and then it was brought across the Himalaya into China. It was what was the Bodhidharma? Bodhidharma brought yoga into China, and then that from yoga turned into the fighting arts of Tai Chi, Chi Gong, Kung Fu. So is it that these three Dantian, was it they originally came from yoga chakra system, and that wisdom was brought over into China, and then they've refined it into their own version with the three Dantian? Or how do you feel the evolution of this wisdom, being that they stack up?
And I'm not much of an academic. I haven't researched anything into the history of how that came about. So I really can't honestly answer you with that one, Scotty. But because I'm such a practical person, it's just in my experience of working with them that, and I haven't seen really anyone else really line them up with the chakra either. It's just I'm sitting there looking at them going, hold on a second. There's this massive overlay. There's this mapping here that works the same. And honestly, I've had people message me when I've written about it and gone, you can't equate the two. This is wrong. And I'm like, well, look, they just seem to line up. They make sense. Yeah. Essentially, the same concepts are being held in each level of the Dantian as in the chakra system.
We're talking about the same energy here. Yeah. And there's
same different, just maybe a different way of explaining the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The only thing I know about Bodhidharma or whatever is I think he actually was involved in martial arts as well. I believe he actually
it would have been all martial arts back then. I mean, they had to, because
You're
that was
climbing
the
over the
feudal
Himalayas,
times.
you probably need to know how to fight, right? Back in that
Yeah,
day and
but
age.
even to survive in those times, I mean, it was a feudal time. You weren't
Yep.
walking down the street saying hi to everyone. You were walking down the street with your sword, checking out everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And so whichever way it happened, I find that as a nice way to look at it. But irrespective if it does relate to the chakra system or it doesn't, the Dantian as their own entity are on the same concept where we're building up a substance, we're refining it, we're building up a substance, refining it as we move higher towards more spiritual, more energetic sort of resonances and vibrations. So the lower Dantian relates to Jing. And Jing in a Chinese concept is best thought of as like DNA. I just like to equate it to that in a Western sense. It's more than that. It does other things as well. But from that perspective, Jing is a refined essence of us.
Mm-hmm.
And food, water, and air are mixed in our body with the Jing to create this.
Okay.
And so it kind of makes sense to explain to people in the West as being like a DNA kind of substance that has our imprint. It is our essence.
Our physical essence, physical body, yeah?
Yeah, it has the blueprint for our physical body to grow and develop. And so if you don't have enough Jing in Chinese medicine, you won't develop well. So young children who have birth defects and or are slow to develop, they would say they have not so much Jing, which hasn't been passed on from their parents, or something's broken down in that reproductive phase.
Yeah.
So the middle Dantian is said to relate to Chi. But I think I went through this in our last thing where Chi isn't so much mystical energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's our meat suit
mm-hmm.
that we wear, where biological organic energy is infused with the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no separation. If you look into the ancient Chinese classical texts in Chinese medicine, they talk about blood and fluid as being Chi, and they talk about Chi as well. But you get a real sense in it, they're actually talking about the physical body.
And that makes sense, because that's the heart, which is pumping, the heart. If the heart stops, the rest of it stops, right? Like,
yeah.
So that's pumping that physical energy. So the Jing you're talking DNA, it's like the energetic potential of the physical body, and then is the Chi the actual physical body?
The Chi's the physical body.
Right.
And I think I mentioned last time that like even Greek philosophy has this idea of growing the chest big and strong to actually make you strong and vibrant, and to have the energy to be courageous and heroic and stand up for everything that you need to stand up for in life and get stuff done. So that's the body growing open. And so, the lungs, the heart would probably also involve stomach and spleen and liver, which build Chi and blood. Stomach's digesting food. The spleen is like a cellular nursery in the West where it matures blood cells. The lungs actually create red blood cells, the aaalllll in the lungs. They found out a while ago now, probably a decade or so, that the lung tissue actually makes red blood cells. Wow. So the Chinese believe all the Chi and blood is made here in the center of the chest, where it's radiated out via the lungs and the heart.
Wow.
So that's our middle Dantian.
The center of Chi.
And then the upper Dantian, as you said, starts kind of at the pit of the throat, where the fifth chakra starts, and ends at the crown of the head. And this refines Shen. Shen is like mind or consciousness. And there's different ways to break this down. But so the idea is that's why I like this overlay of explaining it at least as the chakra system, because I think more people know that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, it's more common in today's society.
People are on board. And so this Shen is that kind of refinement of Jing turning into Chi, refining into Shen, where then you become more intelligent, smarter, more sophisticated, have more of a spiritual kind of person,
more imaginative. Character. You can see into the future. You can create your reality.
More creative, exactly. And so I kind of even look at this as the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you've got at the bottom basic survival.
Yep.
Again, kind of that chakra system. Then in the middle, you're kind of building community. You're building Chi. You're getting your self-worth. You're getting all these kind of aspects. And at the top, you've got self-actualization.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
And so you're kind of building that up. So the idea with Chi Gong is to actually grow, develop, and evolve your body and grow it open so it can refine these substances more efficiently, to build them up so you can develop and become more self-actualized.
Wow. So not only from the physical security, strength of the body, and then moving up into having more of that energy, that bravery, that courage, and then into the self-actualization. So is that what you're doing with the movements of Tai Chi and Qigong? Are you're building from the bottom, and you talked about the geometric structure of each of them, and how once it's more beautiful. I use the word beautiful because I just see like yeah, like in a snowflake sort of thing, or a water drop with the Japanese scientists who did the water drops with the love or hate. You know, the structure was so beautiful. So as that geometrical structure becomes more beautiful, it stacks and grows upon itself until we reach the crown chakra, self-actualization, right? So is that what you're doing in Tai Chi and Qigong? Because in yoga, we're working to open the Sushumna, which is the central channel that the energy of the Kundalini flows through. So each chakra will open and stack on top of itself, opening you've got two nadis, we call it. It's a masculine and a feminine, or a positive and a negative, called the Ida and Pingala nadi. And they spiral up through the center of the body. And so if they're all over the place, they topple on each other, and the energy of the Kundalini can't flow. So what we're trying to do is get them to perfectly open so that the central channel opens. Imagine like a water spinning, and you get the air that moves down it. So the spin of the Ida and Pingala nadis open out, throw out a central channel called Sushumna, and then the Kundalini can rise. So that's sort of relating it to this. So I guess my question is that what we're doing through these movements, the Tai Chi, the Qigong, is we're starting from the bottom in the Jing, and we're moving up through the Dantian to open. Well, I'm saying open, but what does that look like as they're stacking?
Yeah. So I would tend to think that, again, same, different. So there's a meditation in Qigong called microcosmic orbit. You probably know, breathing up through the back, breathing down through the front. And we've got that Ren and Do, that positive and negative. I don't like to tie things down to masculine or feminine. I prefer to keep them in like yin and yang.
Right.
Because men have yin and yang, and women have yin and yang.
Of course.
So we've got that flow, and the spine has the same thing in Chinese medicine, that same entanglement.
Oh, really?
Up.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so it spins up the spine as well in Chinese medicine.
I'm not sure so much if it spins, but I think the spine itself is seen as to be that yin and yang channel.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think like when we visualize the front, I think because of the way the body's moving, the dynamics of the actual physical movement, we're talking up the spine, kind of down the spine, but people talk about it down the front because that's where we access the channel. Yeah. Okay. The channel, of course, would be deeper in the body. Yeah. Yeah, we're just accessing it with acupuncture points on the outside to needle into it. Mm-hmm. But I think what we're talking about more when we talk about the Qigong is, while that energetic thing would be happening, that should be an underpinning of the movement. That mechanic should be occurring from deep core activation and the breath, which is why we can do it probably just from a meditation, sitting there just breathing and getting it to open. Yeah. When the movement comes into it, I think that would be a physical layer on top. And the idea then would be to grow the pelvis wider, would be to grow the chest more open, would be to grow space into the abdomen by opening up, would be to grow the correct tensegrity in the head. So I think a good way to give an analogy of this is, last time I talked about mewing, which was, you may remember, the tongue on the upper palate, the jaw. Yeah. And so that whole area, we're talking about the upper dantian. So if our structure's all forward, open mouth, and our head's going to shrink, we're not going to grow the cavity for our brain to be more complete and more open, more beautiful. Our face and our jaw isn't going to grow properly. So our eyes are going to sink. We're not going to get as much oxygen into our lungs. Like, there's a whole cascade of events that occur when our upper dantian isn't held in the correct tensegrity. And so I think part of the stacking on the physical movement is to actually grow the body into the correct shape
Mm-hmm.
that the Jing says it should be, like our most genetically proficient
Mm-hmm.
shape that it should be. That would then give us the ability for whatever is moving on the inside to actually have the space to do it.
Yeah. It's just like yoga with the yoga asanas, but they would be meditating and moving that energy through meditation. But then the asana, because in yoga, the asana, which is, guys, the asana is the movements, you know, if you go reach up, reach down, you know, go this way, go that way, that's called the asana. They were designed to help the body in meditation, but meditation was the ultimate goal, which is not the meditation itself. It's the self-actualization. It's the, you know, realizing yourself as source.
That's the yoga.
That's the yoga. That's union, right? To unite with not just your body, but to unite with the body of the universe. Mm-hmm. It sounds like this is pretty much the same thing. So Tai Chi, Chi Gong, and yoga, it's like that's just the Chinese version. They have Ayurvedic medicine. We have TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, you know, with the herbs. I mean, it sounds like there's just a massive mountain range in the middle that allow these two, you know, these two schools of thought to have separation, to evolve in their own way, but the root source of them is exactly the same.
Yeah, I believe that's exactly what I believe. And so people start to make up their own stories and nitpick, but I'm like, same.
It sounds like it's the same. And I've studied yoga, like I've studied in the Himalaya, that mountain range. Like I sat at the feet of the Dalai Lama and studied, and, you know, I did my yoga teacher training up there. I've been in the heartland of it. And it sounds exactly, and I've got a black belt in karate. You know, I lived in Japan. I used to speak Japanese. I used to study Chi Gong in Japan. Like, so I've seen both sides of this picture, and what you're weaving together, I've not heard the inner workings of it explained in this way before, even in the chakra system. Sorry, go.
Yeah, no, I actually don't believe many people have put it together, because they're not like that. They want to see things in a very specific way. And martial artists tend to be a little bit that way, you know, where no, this is its own thing. But I just keep looking at it going, no, this is exactly the same thing, different language, maybe different movement principles and different aspects, but I believe it to be essentially the same goal.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Which is difficult, because, you know, I'm trying to, you know, I'm running courses now, and I'm trying to really get people to understand the depth of Qigong. And it's almost like, because of the fame of yoga, that like, it's almost like Qigong has become its little brother. And it's like, oh, that should be easy. That should be simple. Mm-hmm. But, and I get that a lot when I'm running courses. I keep getting people like, oh, isn't this meant to be easy? Isn't this meant to be light? And I think they look at it being slow. Yeah. And they're like, well, it should be easy. And then they do it, and they're like, wow, this is really hard. And I'm like, yeah, you're physically growing your body. Mm-hmm. Like, you are developing. It is Chi work. It is Chi Gong. Mm-hmm. And the Gong grows virtue and merit by growing your body open, by evolving it and developing it physically, energetically, and spiritually. And that's what we're trying to do. And so I think people have this very basic idea of Tai Chi or Qigong that should be very easy, but it's just as deep as yoga. It's just as nuanced. The theory goes, you know, it's just as profound. And it's really interesting that our society has a very different view of it until you ask them to do it. And so I come against people sometimes. They go, you know, it's like, if you went to a yoga class, you'd expect to do a workout, yes? And they're like, oh, yeah. So when you come to a Qigong, why don't you expect a workout? They're like, well, isn't it meant to be easy? And I'm like, not necessarily. I mean, you can do yoga easily as well.
Of course,
It doesn't have to have an intensity to it. But as people progress, they want an intensity to their yoga. Mm-hmm. Some, I mean, you know, and people will go onto that scale where they want to fall. And we've got the people who want it super intense, and we've got the people who are happy with just a workout. But it's almost as if Qigong has only got this aspect. It should be very light. It should be very easy.
The stigma of it.
It's all about energy, right? And so I guess in my sense, I'm trying to educate people about that physicality, about how it develops, how it grows the body, and the physical things it can do. And that is how it develops your energy. That is how we become stronger. It's how we become more resilient.
So that stigma around it, like I mentioned this before we come on, I was sitting with my mother-in-law last night. She's 70, she's got a few health ailments, and I was talking to her about like she's going swimming twice a week, which is great, and she's getting massages. And I said, you need to do something like Tai Chi. And she's like, oh yeah, I see that on the TV, the oldies doing the Tai Chi on the TV. It's always sort of had this stigma of just being like something you do when you're older to try and fix the body that you haven't taken care of your whole life. So shouldn't we be looking to that and saying, hey, well, if they're recommending this to build in old age, why don't we start now so that we have that strength, that tensegrity, the opening of the beautiful geometrical shapes, whatever the theory is, but it's so good for the body for old people. What if we just do that now so we don't have to become old and then try and sort out the issues? They're not recommending yoga as much for older people as they are Tai Chi and Chi Gong. I mean, there's got to be something in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a laugh. I always say to people, yeah, I started my old age exercise routine when I was 19. Like,
I mean, it's true.
Yeah. So, there's a whole conversation we can have there if you're interested around why it's slow.
Yeah, take us on why it's slow, and also like how do we learn this? Because I want guys here, I don't want this just to be theoretical, and I love the theory of it, and I'm trying to understand life through my logical brain, but I also have to use it. I have to experience it. So you teach this, like my mother-in-law was saying, she sees it on TV and she can follow along on TV, but you actually guide people, because I live very far away from you, and I doubt where I live, mate, there's nobody around here teaching Chi Gong or Tai Chi, but I have the internet. Like, how can I learn, or how can we learn? You teach this online. I don't need to be there with you. You don't need to be like lifting my arm here and dropping my chin there or whatever. Can I really learn this on the internet and sort of guide us through what that would look like, of how do I actually start to do these practices? Maybe I can just try it and see if I like it, see if it is as hard as you say that it really is. It's not just some oldie thing in the park. Like, how do I get involved in it?
That was a huge question. All right, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Right. So, as you probably know, because you follow along with the stuff I do, you've seen me work with some men's groups.
Yes.
And so I've been using Qigong to break down groups of young, fit, healthy men. And within a matter of 10 to 15 minutes, I have them whimpering. Within a matter of 20 to 25 minutes, I have them swearing at me. And if it goes much further past that to half an hour, 40 minutes, I can have them crying and really having a good sook, or giving up and just abusing me. Like, because some aspects of the Qigong are extremely confronting. They bring us directly in contact with ourselves. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. We're just standing there in a static posture. Now, what this does is, if we go back to the idea of a tensegrity, and we just think of a diamond shape for a moment.
Yep.
As humans, we build chronic tension patterns very easily, where muscles hold specific amounts of tension. So you can imagine if we had a geometry that one side could get pulled really tight. We kind of mentioned that earlier. So it deforms that shape. So the same kind of thing can happen with, let's just say, a shoulder. So if I was to hold a heavy weight out to the side, I could do that for a little bit, depending on the weight, but I would start to bring it in closer and closer to my center line, the heavier it got, so I could actually hold it there, and I could hold a weight quite close into my center for quite some time. So if I injure my shoulder, I tear a muscle or I get bursitis or something happens there, my shoulder wants to pull into my center line to hold itself. So I call this like a splinting pattern. It's the same kind of concept that if you're in the bush or in a forest, depending where our listeners are, and you twist your ankle or do your knee and you give yourself like a splint, a bandage. You get a piece of wood and you splint your leg up so you can walk. So our body will contract muscles in patterns, muscle chains in patterns that help us to splint something that we've hurt. Or if we have chronic tension, the same thing will happen, where our body gets tighter and pulls in, limits that movement. So that's one aspect that Qigong can help, because it's going to help soften those muscles and open the body back up into a more correct, more accurate, more proficient tensegrity, or more proficient shape. or the opposite can be true, where we've got that diamond shape and we don't move much, so it becomes weak and flaccid, and the diamond also morphs into a different shape because that tensegrity isn't holding it in the most complete shape. And so one of the things that Qigong's good for is actually returning our body to its original shape. And there's actually a science called mechanotransduction, the mechanical transduction of stress and strain through organic tissues, right? And what this does is they can actually track that the pressure on your skeletal system and on your muscular system will change the way that cells can express their DNA.
Jesus.
Yeah, right. How profound is that? So this science, I read about it 10 years ago, and they were saying it was only like 10 or 5 or 6 years old then. So we're only looking at something, it's not even 2 decades old yet, probably in science, but they were tracking the way that our body holds tension into a relationship of how cells express their genetic code.
Wow.
So if your tensegrity is holding tension or it's too loose, then your cells are not being held in the correct shape, in the correct form. And I like the term shape. Your body's not being held in the correct shape, and shape dictates form, form dictates shape. Form dictates function, function dictates form in that way. And so we've got to build those two up together. And so Qigong allows our body to fall back into its original shape.
Wow. And therefore express itself epigenetically in the perfect way. So you're not causing cancer. It's not expressing cancer. It's not expressing disease, but it's actually expressing health because the body is naturally health. Just by the shape, by removing that tension and letting it go back into its natural shape.
Exactly. So put it this way, the Chiropractic Association says that it takes about the pressure of a 5-cent coin or a quarter, if you American, on a spinal nerve to give you almost debilitating pain.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much tension in a muscle to grip or to close down the space, or inflammation to close down the space around a nerve or an organ or lymph tissue, or encroach on other muscles and how they're working to actually start to change the function of our body.
Which then changes how the body expresses itself from a DNA perspective every single moment of your life.
Yeah, it might even just trap a nerve, and so its impulses aren't going to your liver properly, or your spleen, or going down to your feet properly. All of these different, a cascade of effects. And what I like about this idea of Qigong is quite often as humans with our cognition, we go, well, if this is happening, we need to do X, Y, Z. And physios kind of do that. I kind of call it like a Band-Aid approach a little bit, where it's like, oh, your shoulder's sore, let's strengthen this muscle. Oh, that didn't work. Let's strengthen this muscle. Oh, that didn't work. Must be that muscle. Let's strengthen. And it's kind of like just putting a Band-Aid on each time.
Yeah.
And it's like tension, trying to fix tension, trying to fix tension, trying to fix tension. But we never try and return things back to their original tensegrity. And I think that's the gift that Qigong can give us. And so it doesn't make it a be-all and end-all. We should still be running, jumping, doing strength training, doing calisthenics, doing gymnastics, because that was always within martial arts.
Yeah.
Okay. But what it means is by slowing things down to almost to either being completely still and just standing in a single posture for a long period of time, or moving so slowly that it allows the fast twitch muscle fibers and the splinting patterns to be deleted from your body, whilst also strengthening the muscles that should be supporting if they're weak.
That's
sort of
fantastic.
brings the body back into balance.
Yeah.
Often in the West, we don't have the patience.
Yes,
so when I said, I'm doing groups of guys and they're like within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they're swearing at me. It's because it can be quite strong physically. It's a really strong exercise. I actually think it's the most difficult exercise there is.
Are you saying like horse stance with holding the ball, like that one?
Yeah. Or and any myriad of positions you might even hold if you're just standing in a single posture.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere to run. And the mind instantly goes, what the move, you idiot, like do something. Like I can't just stand here and not do anything. Like, isn't there some Instagram?
Especially when my arms are going like this, it hurts.
Right. And so you're really brought into really close contact with yourself. But that's one of the beauties, because just like Vipassana meditation, it brings you into contact with the layers
which is very difficult. Vipassana is so difficult. For anyone that doesn't know what Vipassana is, it's I believe they're 10 days. God, I did it when I was 23. My wife's done it 5 times. And it's silent meditation, they say, from the original lineage of the Buddha. And it's you, noble silence. You can't look at anybody. You don't gesture anybody. It's just you inside yourself. You're meditating from morning to night, either in the hall or in your room, or you can go for like a walking meditation and then sit down again. And for like 10 days, all you do is meditate. Oh my God, it is so hard. It is.
People break, so don't they?
Break, mate. Half the people leave. They can't even make it through the whole time.
Yeah, and so Chi Gong, I actually find a lot of crossover between a static, between a still, just a standing Chi Gong.
Okay, yeah.
And there are differences between that. I don't know how long we've got to go into that. However, the idea is that when we move incredibly slow, or when we're just standing still in a single posture, it deletes it builds up that's weak, and it creates relaxation and softness for that which is tight, and brings us back into our original shape. Okay. So often when we're doing sporting movements, we can, because we're going so fast, it's like we skip over movement.
You were talking about the frames being skipped.
Exactly, last time. And so when we move slow, it's like starting to put those frames into your nervous system so it knows exactly what to do. So let's say
every muscle fiber is having to be integrated through that slow movement, rather than you're skipping from this fiber to this fiber to this fiber, because they're sort of just throwing the energy across.
Exactly. So like if you were going to do like a press with a weight, like a bell weight, you lift it up, you're going to do a press. Have you trained your scapula to retract and sit back into the correct position as they go through that range of motion? Because if it skips because you're fatigued or you haven't programmed that movement pattern in, then that might break down under load and you may give yourself an injury. Maybe you'll get away with it for a specific amount of time, but then that could create inflammation. Your bursa could get inflamed, and 6 months down the track, you're like, I don't know why my shoulder's so sore. Okay, so Qigong should actually be, whilst it could be any movement, most of the Qigong in Tai Chi are compound sporting movements. You're actually moving the entire body as a single entity. Similar to how you might explosively hit a golf ball, or you might explosively hit a tennis ball with a racket. Okay, you have to use the whole body. And I've seen pictures of tennis people having one hand yin, one hand yang, and as they go through their movement, the hand that's yang goes yin, the hand that's yin goes yang, and you can see the shoulders retracting and one protracting, one hip's going yin, one hip's going yang, one knee's going yin, and that's what they talk about in Tai Chi. And so when you're actually doing Qigong correctly, it should be a fully compound sporting movement broken down into the slowest infinitesimal amount of speed, so you can be completely mindful of everything that is happening in that moment.
Far out, Nick. The way that you explain that is just incredible, because if you can do it so slow, speeding it up, now it's every frame is there, as you're saying, so the movement is going to have more strength.
Sorry, I didn't mean to butt in then, but
not at all.
It's not even speed it up. It's do it explosively.
Okay. Yep.
It's the important part. Like a martial art is explosive, and so like hitting a golf ball should be an explosive. It's not sped up. It's actually it's an explosive movement. Everything needs to just do it at once.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's really important, because under an explosive movement, things break down. Our mind can't.
It's in the word, explosive. If it can't handle it, it's going to internally explode rather than putting the energy where you want it to be.
Exactly. And so I believe that what happened with Tai Chi, because Tai Chi is actually only a couple of 100 years old. Okay. But Chi Gong is, millennia, thousands of years old, apparently, as far as the texts say. So I believe what happened is some martial artist along the way went, this is amazing. Why don't we just slow everything right down so I can intricately learn and be mindful about everything that I need to do at any given moment?
And that's how we learn, like even karate, we would punch, from the hip very slowly, and the fist would roll, and we'd feel the hand would contract at the last moment. We'd do it slowly. We'd do the whole thing slowly so that it can explode. Right. So
Yes.
that's in, martial art today. We do it slow, but not to the point of what Tai Chi is doing.
Yeah. And also it's how you might learn to play guitar.
Yeah.
You don't just jump on, your fingers just don't automatically go. You have to go, finger here, finger there, strum, and then change. And it's all slowly until your brain can work out exactly what it's meant to do.
And drums are interesting. I've actually got a drum kit behind me. You can't see it in the dark, but playing a beat slowly is so difficult. That's why everyone, as soon as they jump on a drum kit, they get faster and faster and faster. And you're like, whoa, slow down, man. You're going too fast. Going slowly and keeping that rhythm, very difficult.
So my music teacher at high school, he used to play in like the Melbourne Orchestra, and he came up with a line which was, if you can't play something slow, you don't know it.
Yes, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that, because you're just rushing through it.
If you can't keep that syncopation to a slower beat, you actually don't know the timing of that piece of music. And I love that, because one of the biggest differences in Tai Chi is that every time, just as you're about to get on a strike, you assume the person's moved.
Yeah.
And so you actually don't often get on a strike before, oops, I've had to move. So you're teaching yourself flow, you're teaching yourself adaptability, and to go from one movement into the next without any break or any stopping. And interestingly, a mutual friend of ours, Claire, I was looking through her Chinese dictionary and I looked up Tai Chi, and it actually said meditative shadow boxing.
Wow, cool.
And so you're actually meditatively shadow boxing, fighting a gang in your Tai Chi. Now, most people don't practice it that way anymore. It's kind of just become Chi Gong. It's just become slow. But there are certain schools of Tai Chi that still practice all the explosive forms, all the punching and kicking drills that are originally part of the program, but it's just not what was made popular. It's not what was made mainstream. And so when you see Tai Chi being slow, it is a Qigong. So I kind of explain to people as in, like, you've got yoga, and then you've got all the different sorts of yoga coming out of that mainstream.
Yeah.
So you've got Qigong, and then you've got all these different types of Qigong, of which one is Tai Chi.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Now, originally that was a martial art that used those Qigong movements to train in the explosive movements, as we've said.
Yeah, okay.
But in its own way, that's kind of just become another Qigong, another slow movement. And a lot of the martial elements have been taken out or really watered down in a lot of the Tai Chi that you'd see older people doing in the parks.
Yeah.
So it still has the Qigong health benefits, but the martial...
Well, you don't need that, right? That's not as pertinent today. It is more the health benefits. So what about learning this? Like, I'm actually asking for myself here. Like, I want to know, like, what does it look like? What is your course, permission to pitch us right now about how do I go? Right. I'm not going down to the park with the oldies, but I'll do some movements here. I'll practice a little bit each day or whatever. But what does it look like to learn online?
So I'm sorry, I'm just getting over what I'm about to say here, because it still makes me balk a little bit. But I'm actually trying to change. I want to use the word revolutionize the way that Qigong is taught, because I still believe the movement should move towards being possible to do faster.
Okay.
So whilst I still teach, slow Qigong movements, I actually created a whole movement system that I underpin it, that go through like a functional movement system that build up very specific movements we use in Qigong.
Yep.
So people can learn them as flow drills faster, and then learn to play with the speed. So they're still learning functional whole body movements. Some of them might be isolated to begin with, but as you move through this movement program, they begin to become more compound and more complex with more moving parts, until you actually come up with a fully compound movement drill that could be similar to, like I do a movement drill that I call gibbon swings, and you're kind of swinging from a branch like a gibbon, but you're learning to rotate from the center. You're learning to rotate from that central axis, which would equate energetically to that Kundalini energy or the yin and yang meridian. So how you move from your center, how you move from the dantians to create that movement to ripple out from your core to the extremities of your body. And so there's actually 12 different ways of using our body to create pumping. This is it goes quite scientific. The heart's only one. There's different ways. And when you look at Chi Gong, we're using all 12 of these pumps to actually create a pumping through the body. So the body should end up in its compound movement to be a chi pump. We're pumping chi through our body, sucking it and pushing it, which is why at its pinnacle, Chi Gong is actually an energetic healing art, similar to Reiki. But instead of just going, I am healing you with my mystical energy, there's a tangible kind of way that we put in energy, which would be the same as how we might strike someone or get power from our body to strike, but just done at an intensity of love and compassion and, you know, caring for someone
and
as
healing.
opposed to trying to, and healing as opposed to trying to defend yourself. So I created a movement system that underpins my Qigong system that allows you to actually begin learning these functional movements as you progress through your Qigong. So it kind of acts a bit self-corrective.
Okay.
So to get these flow drills or this Chi Fit movement system, these flow drills correct, your body needs to work in a specific way. And so it acts a little bit self-correcting, because if it's bumbling or it doesn't feel quite right or it's awkward, then chances are you need to keep refining it and keep working on it. Then when it's refined, that movement can go into a Qigong form. And so it can not only be done slow, but it can be done as flow.
I think that's going to be great for us Westerners as well, because especially younger people, we don't have that patience that you were talking about. And if it's like traditional Qigong, I think with the way our lifestyle's moving so fast, and like you said, with the guys in the and the men's circles, like, you know, come on, mate, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So it seems like you've even taken the problems that we may face and you've turned it into your system as a way that we can meet us where we're at, because we're not thousands of years ago where we're sipping tea for 3 hours and then we might get up and like, we're going, mate, we got shit to do, and my body and my mind wants to move. So is that sort of it? Like, you've taken it and made it a way that meets us in our modern world. You're talking about revolutionizing, right? Meets in our modern world and allows us Westerners, and even maybe the Chinese now as well, but allows us in our modern world to be able to tap into it, get the benefits without tapping out because we're bored.
And understanding what you're doing, because that's the main thing. You get some Westerners just to lift their arms up and down, they might feel a bit of pain in that, they might get a bit of a meditation, but they're like, where is the practicality here? Where is the functionality here? So when you start to do it at a bit of a flow, and then you can play with the pace. So you can speed it up, you can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can slow it down, you can play with it in different ways. The idea is that over time, people will start to understand how they can put that into their surfing.
Yeah, for sure.
Into their tennis. Yeah, and slowing it down and understanding the mindfulness of the body. So one of the key lines I always use in my teacher training courses is rest the mind on the edge of physiology.
What does that mean?
So slow your movement down till you can feel every incremental detail of your physiology functioning.
Okay. And what about the mind? How has the mind got to do with that? Okay,
so if we were to take a cross section of a meridian, an energy meridian, and this is of course not reality because we can't get a cross section of a meridian, right? Yeah. But from the sense of what the Chinese are saying is they're saying the center is Jing. Remember that DNA? So it's like Jing. Yep. Then there's Qi wrapped around that. And then around the outside is Shen. And so they're all moving together through the body. And so if Shen is like your consciousness, it actually rests on the edge of your Qi.
Yeah. Wow. Got it. Got it. Got it.
And so when people say like return the mind to the breath, your physical movement can only ever be in the present moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you bring your mind back into contact with your physical movement, if you rest your mind on the very edge of movement or the very edge of your physiology,
Yeah.
you are in the present moment of complete mindfulness for your entire mind and body system.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that's what we're trying to do in our Chi Gong, is bring back that mindfulness to the complete structure, the complete physiology of our body.
Mm-hmm. It's a moving meditation.
It's a moving meditation. And so like people, I've found lately, a lot of people who've been training with me are like, I could never sit down and meditate, but when I do Qigong, I can.
Yeah.
Because they can actually have something to rest their mind on.
Beautiful.
They're physically engaged. And then over time, when they learn to slow down, they can start to rest and sit down and meditate. But to begin with, like as a 19-year-old, I was the same. Couldn't tell me to sit down and meditate, well, maybe for 35 seconds. But after that, I'm like, pow, I want to go and do something. But after years and years of training, I actually found I really enjoyed sitting down and meditating because I could create the time, I could create that space, I could rest my mind and actually meditate.
Yeah.
But for most people today, they can't even stop.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Nobody got time for that. Exactly. And so Qigong, I think, is one of the best ways to teach ourselves to slow down.
Because that's all it is. You're slowing down. I love that you said about the Jing, the Qi, and then the Shen around it. And it's in in each meridian. That's how they're moving together. I've never heard about that before. I imagine the body as well, right? Like we've got these layers. The mind is this field around the body, right? And then the physical body, and then the inner core is that Jing that you're talking about.
Well, I mean, even think of a cell, a single cell.
Yeah.
You've got the nucleus, which is the Jing, the DNA. Then you've got the organelles, which are the Qi. And then you've got the cilia and the Shen, that vital action of that cell as being its consciousness and of its mind. And so Jing, Qi, Shen is throughout nature. It's throughout us. And so even though I can say, like, think of a meridian, we've got to think of that as being homogeneous throughout the entire body.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if we can bring our consciousness onto that edge of movement or onto our physiology, that's when we actually take ourselves out of that monkey mind.
Yeah.
And we actually get the mind back into the physical body.
My monkey mind right now wants to understand Chi Fit. So you've created Chi Fit. It's an online training program. It sounds like you've got a teacher training version of it as well. But there's a version of just like the average person just wants to learn this. What does it look like? You said it stacks upon itself. There's a sequence that we learn. Is it like a video sequence we learn, like each day we have to watch a video and do some exercises, or what does it look like?
The way I've set it up is a bit more like a class. And so I've got like a level 1 and a level 2. And if you do level 1 and level 2 together, that's like the teacher training kind of module.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or if you do level 1 itself, it's not going to take you into the teacher training aspect so much.
Yeah.
Okay. So level 1 is more about just the fundamental theories of Qigong and Chinese medicine.
Yep.
And Taoism, and what are we doing from an energetic perspective, and from that, and then underpinning that with exercises that do progress. And so we go through very specific, we start with breathing. We start with the fundamentals, right? We start with breathing, then we go into getting the spine to move, the spine to warm up, and going through the microcosmic orbit, which was similar to the Kundalini thing we spoke about.
Okay. To
get that deep core and the fundamental breathing mechanics of good diaphragmatic breathing, good natural breathing to occur. We go through from that into reverse breath so we can get the pressure shifts that we need inside the body to create Qi movement, Qi transformation. Then we move through into standing static Qigong, go right through the structure, because Qigong is very structured in the sense that, well, even flow in the West talk about it now, where flow comes through structure and discipline. Okay, so we see a lot of Qigong people who are just too flowy and their body's kind of out of structure. Their knees are wobbling all over the place, and their hips and their pelvis. But if we stick with a very specific structure and learn that, then that structure gives rise to flow. You don't see a sprinter running down a 100-meter track going, flopping around, right? He is in structure, but that structure creates a biotensegrity of dynamics that allows him to run extremely fast in flow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have this idea that Qigong should be nice and floppy, but that's created through this structure that allows you to soften into it. So we go through that, our standing Qigong, and go deeper into that aspect. Then we move into the movement drills, which I said, those Chi Fit movement drills, which then begin to lead through the follow courses like level 2, level 3, level 4, towards more compound level sporting movements, more complex movement, which at its pinnacle would be called internal movement as far as Qigong or Tai Chi are concerned. But from a West, we'd be talking about extremely slow, compound sporting whole body movement.
Right.
And it breaks down to a state they call Sung. And Sung is when you basically become nature. You disappear and you just feel the whole body moving. You're mindful of every increment moving in complete synchronicity with everything else. Like what one movement creates, the other movement creates all movement. There's no isolation.
Beautiful. Am I guaranteed to get an eagle to come down and fly with me while I'm running on the beach?
You remember that?
Oh, mate, I can't forget it. That's fantastic.
But look, my students start to talk about their interactions with different animals and stuff when they're doing it, and that presence that they get. So you just have to go somewhere with eagles. I'm sure it'll happen, mate.
Mate, it'll happen. If it works for you, I can make it happen. Well, this is the same. So you're going into a little bit of jargon, which is freaking me out because I just want the details of, like, not the deep details, but we're learning the foundation. So you're teaching us breathing, you're teaching us the theory behind it, and then we start going into the movement practice, the flow that stacks upon itself to become more compound movements. And what is there a final part after that, or can I start diving?
Yeah, and then there's just Qigong. So like at a basic level, we need to learn tracks. We just need to learn where the arms go.
Okay. And that allows us to overlay principles too. What is grounding? What is double weightedness? What are the principles that we're looking at as we're moving? Okay. And so learning very basic tracks won't even really include internal movement because it's simply very isolated body movement with structure. Okay. But as you move through my system, I've designed it so you get progressively towards more internal movement. So recently I likened it to people saying, imagine you go to a dance class, beginner's dance class, and you're taught what your arms and legs do, but you're not taught how to connect them to get into flow. Yeah. You're just taught that your arms do these movements. And every week you go back and that's all you're ever taught. You'd get bored really fast, right? That's my problem with salsa dancing. That's why I stopped going to salsa, because they would I'm like, just let me dance. You showed me the feet, you showed me the hands. I got a couple of moves, just turn the music on and let's do. Nah, very rigid. It's just so boring. Much to my wife's success that I quit. She said, I just take me to the dance and I'll dance all night, but they start at 10 o'clock and I'm in bed by then. Anyway, I digress.
Right. So, so the idea of this is that Chi Fit movement system, which underpins everything, starts to teach you how to connect it. So as you go to deeper levels, it'd be like a yoga class going to more advanced yoga. Yep. Yeah. So what I see a lot of Qigong doing at the moment is just being isolated arms and legs moving with none of that connection, or minimal. Yeah. Some people get it, but not everyone. And so my big question was, how do I change that? How do I teach people that aspect? And so that's what that Chi Fit movement system does. So it adds up over successive courses to take people deeper, because my biggest thing is Qigong will continue to be yoga's little brother unless people understand the depth it can go to and can experience the depths of meditation, the depths of flow, and the depths of dissolving into nature that it can take you to. So how do we teach people how to get there? Because at the moment, if we go onto YouTube or most Qigong courses, it's just level 1 basic arms and legs, broken down movement with no real way to teach people. And so if we're going to learn online, which is what a lot of the world is doing now, there needs to be a medium, a glue, to actually help teach people that adhesive aspect of how to go deeper into the movement and make it flow. And so that's the gap I've tried to fill in through this program. So level 1 won't take you that deep into that because it's still fundamentals. We're still creating functional movement patterns, very basic. Sometimes I reckon people might be going, what am I learning this for? But then a level or 2 into it, you're like, oh, like I understand. What you don't realize is that now your hips are working correctly. Now your knees aren't rotated in and sunken. You're no longer, arches aren't rolled in. They're sitting flat. So there's a whole heap of functional movement correction that goes into this as well, that teaches you and reforms your body movement.
So by the end of it, how many levels are there? How many courses are there? It's just the 2?
Yeah, I've got 2 at the moment, but I've got a 3rd and a 4th that are kind of background being designed in my head that take the movement deeper. And then after then, I'm going to split into teaching Tai Chi and teaching the martial aspects. Right, so this is a very primary entry that still teach a very high quality Chi Gong and a very high internal movement, but starting people off at the basics. And I find that some of the basic movements I do, people still don't have the coordination in their body to perform very basic movements. Yeah.
So what do I get at the end of it? So level 1 and then the teacher training level 2. Level 1, by the end of that, will I have my own Tai Chi practice that I can then be moving through every day for my 10, 15 minutes, however long it goes for that? You build it up to the...
So you'll still get very specific Qigong forms. Yep. So by the end of it, you can design your own practice. And they're easy, but they're complex.
Because I know in Tai Chi, there's like actual forms, right? And you stack and you slowly learn this form so that you can practice this form over and over again. Is that what you do as well? Or you more learn the different forms and then I structure my own?
So one of the reasons, because like I practice Tai Chi first and foremost and the martial aspect. Okay. But what I found was through teaching people this, they're like, I don't have time for a 1-hour form in the morning, or I don't have time for that. Like I want the benefits, but I need them a little bit quicker. And so that's where Qigong can be really helpful because they're often quite repetitive movements. They're much shorter and you can go, right, today I'm going to do this movement, and this movement for liver, spleen, and kidney. Bang. And design yourself a little movement package for that day.
Right. Okay.
But you're still overlayering all the principles, because I actually believe it's the principles that are important, not so much the movements. The movements are good and the movements do underpin everything, but it's overlaying the principles of how we move. That's really important, and that they go across the board through all the movements.
That's fantastic.
And so we can learn. So through that first level 1, you do come out at the end being able to have a great little practice. And at the end of it, I have, 5, 6, 7 little practices that you can just follow along with.
Great.
But the course does take you quite deep. So we spend like a whole time, there might be a whole week on this one form. Then there might be a whole week on another form and then another one. But by the end, they only take you 5 minutes to do.
Oh, so each form would be 5 minutes and you got about 7 of them in there that I could stack on top of each other if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And because it's kind of the first part of the teacher training, I teach people how to weave that in for their own practice. So in the end, people don't need to follow along, which is not what I want. I want people to free think. I actually want people to be able to get these principles and this understanding of Qigong and jump onto YouTube and watch someone else's form, but improve it because they understand the principles that are involved.
Yeah, that's great.
I get a lot of people who do my stuff and they're like, after doing yours and I jumped on YouTube, like, I realize that they're not explaining things in the depth that you do. Now I know what I'm doing.
Go.
No, you're right. Go.
I'll definitely give you that, mate. You've got a way of explaining things. Like you really go deep into explaining. And that would be my only query inside of this. How much is it theory and how much am I going to be moving my body? Because I want to understand the theory, but I'm here to get the benefits and not just listen to you talk. Well, I'm honest, mate. Like I'm here for me. I want to be able to move my body. So like I got to understand it because I have to satiate that understanding. But it sounds like I walk away with having these. Here I am doing it with the form and with the movements, right? So I've got my own practice. I understand the fundamentals and why I'm doing it, but I'm actually moving throughout this course and not just sitting watching a TV.
Yeah. So what I tend to do is I kind of have different ways, different classes within it. So if I'm explaining a Chinese medical theory, a lot of it's just teaching, and you might need to listen to me for 40 minutes.
Yeah, which is fair enough. I've got to understand the theory of it. I get that.
Yeah. And if you didn't, skip through to the next video. But anyway, then I've got like full teaching mode, which is me saying, please follow along with me as if you're in a class with me while I explain.
Yeah.
So your hands are doing this. You've just got to get this to rotate. This has got to happen. Make sure this is happening correctly. So we go through in full teaching mode.
Right.
And that's where I can talk about principles and go, okay, so just follow along with me a moment. And what I want you to do, or what I want you to feel into is X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But then after that, let's just do the exercise together.
Cool.
Yeah. And so I do go through the nuances in a lot of detail, because learning on a screen can be quite difficult because you're not there with me in 3D. You can't walk around and look at me and go, oh, this is happening or that's happening. And I've learned a lot over the years on how to best describe that. But what I find in a lot of other people's Chi Gong courses is just them doing it and a voiceover of them explaining it. But it's not like they're teaching it. And so there's a bit of a difference here. This is me actually going over as I would teach you if I was in front of you.
Yeah, right, cool.
But then once you've got that down, here's the follow along section, because now you know what you're doing. So when I weave it together and I just teach it as if I was in front of you, as going through a Chi Gong form, that you've got all those nuances understood.
Perfect.
So when I say make sure your shoulders are pinned back, you know what that means.
You taught me that already. Yeah.
Talked about that. Yeah. When I go through the movement cues. And sorry, there's one other type of video as well I do, which is when I just talk about the energetics. So this can actually be quite quick. So I'm like, right, now you physically know what you're doing. Let's talk about the energetics. We skip through to another video and I'm like, right, you're scooping up Jing. You're lifting it up into your chest. Remember, that's where all the Chi and blood is made. Now we're going to fan that Chi and blood out via the lung. Remember, that's Wei Chi. So it's going to warm the outside of your skin. It's going to raise your immunity. X, Y, Z's happening. So that's when I weave in the Chinese medicine.
Cool.
Then when we go into the third video of just me doing it with you, I can weave in the structure and I can weave in the energetics, and you can just travel along with me knowing what all that means, because that's what you need to embody. Because when you're lifting it up, you need to feel as if you're lifting it up. Yeah, and I talk about this in the class. It's like I was teaching my students the other day, you're scooping up earth chi. So you're doing a squat right down to the ground. You're picking up earth chi. I'm like, I want everyone to imagine you're holding a heavy boulder. And instantly they all got into the position as if they were holding something heavy, because no longer could their mind say to them, just be soft and loose. They instantly went, oh, if I'm holding something super heavy, I need a very specific structure. And then when they stood up and lifted that boulder, their legs were doing the work. They weren't just standing up any longer.
Yeah.
That's the internal mind. That's how we begin to get people to actually feel what it's like to lift earth energy. It's not simply scooping and standing up.
Yeah, love that, mate. Thank you so much. That's perfect. I like it because when I've done classes in the past, they don't have the ability to go into the theoretical side, to go into the energetic side. It's more just like there's a teacher at the front, there's 20 students, and we're following the movements of what he's doing, and he might like correct us here and there. But it sounds like what you're doing is helping me understand why I'm doing it. And like you're saying, that will then allow the posture to move into a better place because I understand why I'm doing it. So yeah, I like the medium of it, because in a class I've got an hour with the teacher, he's going to try and maximize that. But if you've got a course, and it sounds like it's like all courses, videos where I can move through in my own time. Is there like a support? Is there a weekly Zoom, or is there a
chat? So on the online course. I don't do a weekly Zoom because everyone will be at different locations.
Yeah.
But I actually, as you go through, there will be like a live Zoom class for you to follow along with.
Okay. But if I have questions, like, is there a community I can ask questions and stuff?
Yeah, there's a Facebook mastermind group. So everyone doing the online course can just jump in there.
Yeah.
And that allows them to write on the Facebook wall, hey, Nick, I've just done this module and you said this, I don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if I can't answer it in 2 or 3 lines, I'll make you a video and I'll just post it with it.
Yeah.
Of me standing here in my studio going, good question, Scott. Right. So what you've got to do is X, Y, Z, because that's actually a bit faster for me than writing anyway.
Typing it out. Yeah.
Typing it out. And it's much more clarity for you. So yeah, I run a Facebook mastermind. I put all little tidbits, extra little training things in there. So it really builds up that kind of community of people working together to build up their Qigong practice.
I love it, mate. I love it. I'm curious. I'm really interested in having a look at what you're doing. As I said, I've been training martial art since I was 10. I pushed my dad to take me to martial art, and he's like, karate? Where'd you get this idea from, karate? I was like, I don't know, I just got to train karate. And, you know, I've always had it in my life, all the way into yoga. Now people ask me, because I do a lot of it outside. I just like being in the park and moving. People ask me, like, you know, what are you doing? Like, is it yoga, or is it martial art? Or it's like, no, it's life. Movement is life. You know, I dance. I love to dance. I love yoga. I love martial art. Like, it all moves together for me now. So I'm really curious in going in this direction. If there's anyone else out there that's curious as well and would like to learn more, where do we go? How do we go and learn more about this? And, you know, for the course itself, more about you.
Yeah, for sure. So connect with me on Facebook, Nicholas Blewett. I'm sitting there with a guitar. Can't miss that. The other way you can have a look is just all the W's, chifit.com.au. In there, I've got a little bit of information
and
about
spell Chifit, because I know it's spelled different.
Oh, yeah. Good. QIFIT.
.com.au.
Yeah, .com.au.
Okay.
Exactly.
We'll link to all of that, guys, in the show notes as well. So Nick's, I'll put Nick's Facebook, and I'll put QFit, I went to say, right? Chifit, QIFIT, chifit.com.au. I'll put that in the show notes too. So all on that website is the courses there. Like, I can buy them there if I wanted to.
No, not quite yet. I'm in the production of getting my whole website upgraded. I've had a really big response lately as I've been pushing this out. So 2023 is the year for me to get little mini courses and all sorts of things done. I'm in the process of filming all those. So if you are interested and you want to connect with me, just do it. Talk to me about what would best suit you, because I love getting ideas off people to find out what exactly would suit people in what they want. But yeah, within the next 2 months, you'll have a brand new website up with all the courses there that you can buy straight into. But at the moment, I really like to talk to people and just find out exactly what they want, what they need, and how I can best work with them. So if anyone's interested out there, please hit me up.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we'll connect with you on Facebook. As I said, guys, I'll link to Nick's Facebook here, and you can just message him from there. That'd be great. I love it, mate. I love what you're doing. It sounds like this is the future for you. I mean, you've been in this for 20-something years, right? And, you know, you're obviously a Chinese medical practitioner by trade. That's what you're doing day to day. But now this passion to get this Chi Gong out there, I like it. I really want to support you. And I'm not just saying that because you're on my podcast. Like, I'm saying that because I really want to support you. I love what you're doing. I think it's essential for health. I want to learn it myself. So if I can support you in any other way, obviously, this is our second podcast together in a few weeks. But if there's a way that I can support you, I will. Just let me know. And guys, I'd encourage you, go and connect on chifit.com.au. You're based on the Gold Coast, right?
I am. I'm here on the Gold Coast. Yep.
Cool. So people could even come to you for acupuncture and Chinese medicine work on the Gold Coast as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. And that'll all be on chifit.com.au.
It will be. It will be. And if there's guys out there that are interested in more of the martial art aspect too, and women as well, I actually have another thing that I'm doing at the moment, project I'm getting off the ground, I call the Inner Animal. And that's where I'm fusing that martial arts understanding with the Qigong, and working with guys kind of in a men's group situation to get in touch with that animal within them, to be able to, you know, get that explosive energy out, but then just being able to calm it back down. Really getting in touch with that aspect and using martial arts for that, from that Chi Gong meditation and energetic side. So maybe there's a whole conversation in there for us next time, Scotty.
Maybe there is, mate. And I look forward to having that conversation. Guys, head over to Nicholas' website. If you need any of those, if you're listening to this on the podcast or catch it on YouTube or whatever, scottyz.com. You can search Nicholas Blewett there. I'll put the links in the description. All of the show notes will be there, and I'll include all Nick's stuff. And otherwise, go and find Nicholas over on Facebook or chifit.com.au. Mate, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure to dive in. You've satiated a lot of my desire to understand more about this Chinese ancient healing martial art, because it's sort of been around. And the fact that you're talking about these 3 energy centers and the 3 types of energy is completely new to me, let alone for most people out there, you know, and I'm in this world and obsessed with it. You bring a depth of wisdom that I haven't experienced before. And I really, really appreciate that. You're a fantastic teacher. The way that you explain things is really great. So thank you, you know, for everything that you do, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you heaps, Scotty. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks.
Champion. All right, guys, Awaken Freedom. We are here. It is our time. I love you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.